My name is Cera Refutation. Tonight I will be refuting my advocate's claim of exercising, specifically running and weightlifting, has more cons than pros when the person lacks knowledge of proper techniques. The secondary claims used by the advocate to support the main claim includes that 1. Over-exercising increases risk of heart health. 2. Improper breathing techniques hold back a person's ability to get the most out of their workout. And 3. People are much more prone to injury when using improper techniques. In this presentation, I will be referring to 2 types of people which I would like to clarify now. A person who lives a sedentary life, which means that they are inactive or spend a lot of time sitting down, versus an extreme athlete, which I will be defining as a person who runs in more than 20 miles per week for 10 years or more consecutively. The people that tend to fall under this category typically are marathon runners. I'm going to begin by discussing the advocate's first secondary claim, which was over-exercising increases the risk of heart health. The evidence provided to back this claim was done in 2012 by James O'Keefe, the cardiologist at the Mid-America Heart Institute. This study concluded that running for a long period of time, such as marathons, increases the level of tropamine, which has resulted in increasing the athlete's risk of getting a heart attack. This is the only evidence provided to support this claim, and this is also the only study I was able to find on the internet to come to this conclusion. While looking for the methods that James O'Keefe did to come to this conclusion with the study, I was unable to find a lab write-up which comes to question the credibility of his methods. I would also like to go to another statement that she made that about over-exercising, that people believe they should run for longer or at an extremely fast pace when they first begin. However, she doesn't support this with any evidence. The last point the advocate makes to support this secondary claim contradicts her main claim. The advocate claimed that a sedentary person's risk is 50 times higher developing coronary heart disease than a person who exercises. Although the advocate is trying to argue that over-exercising causes more harm than good, she does the opposite. The study that she got this from was done by Dr. Carl Labby with 52,000 runners, 38,000 non-runners, and 14,000. And although over-exercising has shown small signs of small health deterioration on extreme athletes, the extreme athletes still show to live longer and healthier lives than those who are sedentary and don't exercise throughout their life. Even when using improper techniques, exercising is shown to have more pros than cons. The next secondary claim that the advocate used was improper breathing techniques hold a person's ability to get the most out of the workout. Although the statement is true, the cons do not outweigh the pros. The only evidence that was provided to show that running without using proper techniques has disadvantages was from Runner World that stated, runners who use improper breathing techniques have the most strain on their leg, and the harder the respiratory muscles had to work, the more their legs struggled in a race. Improper breathing techniques while running also leads to discomfort in the chest and the back. However, these disadvantages do not outweigh the health advantages that running can provide, even with improper breathing. Working out reaps benefits such as decreasing the risk of diseases. Michelle Olson, professor of exercise physiology at Auburn University, concluded that your risk of diabetes goes down the more you work out. Olson conducted a study of more than 14,000 women who had levels of high aerobic fitness were 55% less likely to die from breast cancer than those who don't work out. And women considered moderately fit had a 33% lower chance of developing the disease. A little temporary pain working out, even if you don't know proper techniques while running, seems to outweigh the cons and the pros. The final claim made was that people who weightlift are more prone to injury when using improper techniques. The only evidence that was used by the advocate to support this was that in a study, 73.5% participants sustained an injury while weightlifting. And although 73% may seem like a big percentage, the size of the study that she used this from only had 132 people, which is kind of an insignificant size to make an inferential statistic on weightlifters of the population. The people observed from this study were also from a popular high-intensity power training class, and the advocate's trying to make an impression on people who are using improper techniques, but if they're in a proper training class, then they probably aren't using improper techniques, so she shouldn't even be using the study to make her claim. In conclusion, with the evidence provided by the advocate and the evidence that I provided tonight, Refuting secondary claims ever made. I feel that the claim of exercising, specifically running and weightlifting, have more cons and pros is incorrect, and in fact, even with improper techniques, people who exercise or over-exercise are still better off than non-runners, specifically in terms of health. Thank you.
All right, structurally everything's clear. I think that you make the definitional issue at the beginning, or the distinction between sedentary people and people who are extreme athletes. Some of the evidence applies, if we're making generalizations, to people who exercise a substantial amount, not to moderate degrees, and I think that that's an important distinction to make. Having made that distinction, I think you ought to use it a little bit more in the rest of your argument, because it seems like it doesn't really come up that this argument only applies to extreme athletes, and even then extreme athletes are still better off than the general population who doesn't exercise at all. This is, in essence, the inference being made by the advocate is that there's some harm for people to start doing exercises or to exercise more frequently or in different conditions than is average, when in fact it only applies to a specific group. So it's like the generalization doesn't apply to this particular group. It's a violation of that deductive reasoning process that we talked about here. So you've got a sweeping generalization that is a little bit problematic. I thought that you had good counterclaims talking about how people who do exercise have lower risks of a variety of kinds of diseases. That's the most important thing. Don't get confused by this notion that there's some danger. You don't want to deny that maybe somebody is hampered by bad breathing techniques, or they could overexert themselves. That might be true, but it only applies to a limited population. That's the argument. I think that like you said, you set it up at the beginning, and I don't think you're emphasizing it quite as much. The rest of the time, though, I thought you did a good job kind of isolating the benefits of exercise in comparison to whatever risks the advocate's talking about. And one of the things we always want to look at is, since the advocate made a comparative statement, what information did they provide to give us such a comparison? You've provided a good comparison when it comes to, for example, the decreased risk of breast cancer or the decreased risk of heart disease, and the advocate didn't provide any statistical comparison of risks, and I think that would be another way to make that argument. All right, thank you.